Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant to bring you another reaction video, this time to Generation Tech's Millennium Falcon vs. Defiant. Basically, I've seen some of Generation Tech's stuff. They generally have great information and are fun storytellers, but I find myself often disagreeing with their conclusions, so here we are. I also have links to my Ko-fi account and Fourth Wall merch store in the description if you're interested in supporting the channel or just want a cool t-shirt or mug. Before we get started, I do want to be clear. I'm not here to call anyone stupid or anything like that. I'm here to keep the conversation going on this kind of thing and give my own 2 cents on how certain matchups would go based on the evidence provided and my own knowledge. So with that, we'll get started. Millennium Falcon versus Defiant, according to Generation Tech.
Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Ben. Today we are looking at a hypothetical situation, the USS Defiant from the Star Trek universe versus the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. First, let's take a look at a few statistics of the two ships, including their size. The Defiant is the larger of the two ships at 560 feet or 170 meters long, whereas the Millennium Falcon is just 111 feet or 34 meters long.
Yeah, so pretty stark size difference, but that makes sense. The Defiant has a sizable crew. It's actually a full-on... When the Federation actually decides to make a warship, this is their first attempt at it. Millennium Falcon is just a tiny freighter. It's not even a big one. So yeah, let's see what they have for this.
In fact, it's only as long as the Defiant is tall, but that isn't a problem for Han Solo, who is used to taking on or escaping from larger vessels.
Okay, so taking on is probably a significant stretch. He never takes on a Star Destroyer. He does, however, evade them a few times. Very important distinction.
In terms of weaponry, the Defiant is the more heavily armed of the two ships, with pulse and beam phasers, photon and quantum torpedoes, shields, and a cloaking device on loan from the Romulans. Star Trek...
It also has a blade of armor, so if you do manage to get through their shields, the blade of armor has further protection.
Weaponry is also normally thought of as more powerful, with photon torpedoes having a yield of 64 megatons and phasers a power of 5.1 megawatts. The Millennium Falcon had...
Okay, so that's massively misleading. I've used the, analog of most energy weapons are basically squirt guns, right? You're taking some stuff and you're shooting it at the enemy. Phasers are squirt guns that are shooting acid, because the nadion particles that they're shooting on their own disintegrate matter. Also, the energy output is, yes, it says that it's only that many megawatts on the can, but at least in the technical manuals, but that's demonstrably not true based on the stuff that they do. Also, those particular technical manuals are like from the 80s, so they're talking about phasers that are few generations out of date, so there's a lot wrong with what he just said.
2 quad laser cannons operated by turret gunners, 2 Arakid ST-2 concussion missile tubes. Each of these tubes held a magazine of 4 missiles, and the Falcon also had the AX-108 ground buzzer blaster cannon, which had been installed by Han Solo for defending the ship on the ground. And of course, it had deflector shields. The Star Wars...
So important note, because he didn't actually mention any yields on any of those, none of them come close to the output of any of the Federation weapons. The concussion missiles in particular are high explosive only. The only reason why they do any amount of damage to the Death Star in Return of the Jedi is because they were launched directly at the reactor, which it doesn't... In Star Trek, you can take a phaser to a warp core if it's unshielded and blow it up that way. It's kind of misleading to be like, oh yeah, it did this much damage if the thing that you shot was inherently explosive. That's like saying that a tracer round has multiple gigajoules of energy in it because you shot a propane tank outside of a building and it happened to go up.
Star Wars weapons do seem to be a bit less powerful than Star Trek's, with those concussion missiles that were installed on the Falcon having a yield pretty similar to a Star Wars proton torpedo, just a few kilotons.
No, they don't. Even proton torpedoes do not have kilotons of yield. The proton torpedoes that we get to see are mainly in A New Hope. They're what is used to blow up the Death Star. They are not thermonuclear in yield. They did, however, have enough punch to be able to set off the chain reaction that blew up the Death Star, but again, Most of that heavy lifting was done by the Death Star itself and causing things in there to start blowing up and then blowing up other things. The missiles themselves did very little damage.
In addition, the yield was mostly focused on the tip of the missile or the torpedo, which meant that it was great at punching holes in things, but less good at causing massive explosions. Both ships were overpowered for their size. The Defiant almost shook.
Oh, he also didn't actually touch on the quantum torpedoes that the Defiant carries, which it's unclear how powerful they actually are, but people tend to figure that they're at least twice as powerful as photon torpedoes, for whatever that's worth.
Itself apart during testing, but Chief Miles O'Brien worked on improving the ship's structural integrity field, and after upgrades, the Defiant was capable of Warp 9.2. Han Solo had installed an SSP-05 hyperdrive in the Millennium Falcon, which was twice the size of the stock engine of the ship, and after further fine-tuning gave the Falcon a 0.5 hyperdrive rating, much faster than the Defiant.
Yeah, so he's not really going into that, but basically when they say light speed in Star Wars, they don't mean light speed, it's a colloquial term. Yeah, the faster than light speeds for anything Star Wars are way faster than anything that the Federation has, at least in the main series. Eventually they get into like slipstream drive and stuff like that, but that's kind of like Picard era and later, so not really relevant for this. But speaking of relevance, it's also not really relevant to the comparison because neither side is going to be fighting it faster than light. The Falcon literally can't, and the Defiant can only fight other stuff that is at warp, which the Falcon can't do.
As for shields, Star Wars shields are often said to be much stronger than those in Star Trek.
Based on what? Oh, the weapons being thrown around? Well, that makes it entirely dependent on how much damage those weapons are actually doing. I've done multiple videos regarding how much more powerful phasers are than turbo lasers, so if you're going entirely based on that, that means that Federation, well, just Star Trek shields in general, are far more powerful than Star Wars shields because they're having to repel Star Trek weapons. Ta-da! Also, they can do stuff like, I don't remember the name of the episode, but there's a couple episodes of Star Trek where they engaged multiphasic shielding, which basically let them sit against a star and not take damage. Something that almost all Star Wars vessels are completely incapable of doing, notable exceptions being things like the Sun Crusher, which is basically made of neutronium. Anyway.
This is debatable, but for the purpose of this fight, we will say that Star Wars shields are stronger.
By class or in general? Like any amount of shielding on anything? So an X-Wing has better shields than a Galaxy class? That's a bit of a stretch. Even if pound for pound they're way better, there's a lot more pounds on the Star Trek side in this matchup. They just said that the Defiant dwarfs the Falcon. So how can you... Okay, whatever.
So let's say the Defiant one day is embarking on a mission to the Gamma Quadrant with Worf in command and enters the Bajoran wormhole. But for some reason, the other end of the wormhole doesn't open up in the Gamma Quadrant, but instead, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, somewhere near Tatooine, where Han Solo is just about to make a jump to hyperspace in the Falcon.
Damn prophets.
Blasts out of the wormhole, and the crew immediately realize they are in uncharted space, so they take precautions, which includes raising shields and bringing weapons online. The Falcon crew see this and mistake the Defiant for a new experimental Imperial warship that's just dropped out of hyperspace with shields up and weapons charged.
So it's funny that he mentions weapons charged and all that, and the shields up and stuff. Not really any demonstrated sensor capabilities on the Falcon capable of finding any of that information out. Like shields being up, maybe they could figure that out. The only time they get to see them trying to detect anything was in Return of the Jedi, and it was basically saying, we don't detect anything. Well, that's weird. Must means we're being jammed. In terms of they've powered their weapons and stuff, that's inserting Trek technology into Star Wars, which simply is not reasonable to do.
Han gets Chewie to fly the ship, and him and Luke go man the quad laser cannons. Now, real Star Wars fans know that Han shoots first.
Bet you have.
Ha ha ha.
And this situation is no different. The Falcon
Okay, so Han shoots first, but he's also not an idiot. He never takes a shot at a Star Destroyer because he knows that would be suicide, but the matchup has to happen, so whatever.
immediately opens fire with its quad laser cannon turrets. The Defiant's shields start taking hits, but the laser cannons aren't especially powerful against the Defiant.
Thank you for pointing that out. No, they are not.
Many people think of this clip when talking about the effect of lasers against Star Trek shields.
Captain, they are now locking lasers on us.
Lasers?
Yes, sir.
Lasers can't even penetrate our navigation shields, don't they know that?
But in actuality, the Star Wars weapons aren't really lasers. They're a type of plasma weapon that, according to some sources, are incredibly powerful.
So, based on what I can dig up, he's totally right. They are plasma weapons. This comes with a bunch of advantages and disadvantages. The advantages being they can pack a lot more damage per energy amount than lasers typically can, which is great. Downsides being things like they don't travel all that fast, which means that their effective range and accuracy are highly limited. If they were lasers, then human operators for the quad laser turrets would be just a absolutely moronic idea because you'd just be able to have a computer target it, have a mirror do your targeting and all that, whatever, and then just shoot the TIE fighters out of the air. There would be no, let me try to lead my target and try to hit it or anything like that. It'd be a lot simpler. The fact that they miss so often is a result of the fact that the bolts are traveling quite slowly. Also, the effective range for turbolasers is demonstrably quite short as well. The clearest example we get to see is in The Last Jedi, in which the Supremacy was unable to damage the Raddus because they weren't that far apart, but they were far enough apart that it couldn't do any damage. Lasers would have an even shorter effective range. The quad lasers that they're talking about would have because they're not turbo lasers. Turbo lasers are scaled up versions, which are meant for capital ship fights. Anyway.
In Legends, a similar weapon mounted on the X-Wing had a power of 126 terawatts. That's 126,000 gigawatts. Just look what happens to Star Trek shields when they're hit with just 400 gigawatts of energy.
Shields are down.
Yeah, so that's very convenient that he's pointing out something from Legends, which might as well be fan fiction. Does that mean that, granted he made this before Ahsoka was a thing, but since what's on screen trumps all, does that mean that actually the guy that wrote the Legends novel had no idea what he was talking about, and in fact, turbolasers have the yield of approximately rock concert pyrotechnics, and therefore the quad lasers on the Falcon do even less damage? Hasn't aged well.
Captain, they hit us with 400 gigawatts of particle energy.
He also said it was particle energy, not random plasma.
Damage, superficial, but I'm having trouble reassembling the shields.
Now, even though the Defiant's shields are more powerful than the Enterprise D's, they would still be defeated. But to be honest, that is from Legend, and it sounds like someone just plucked a figure out of thin air.
Thank you for pointing that out. They totally did, because numbers that are big sound cool.
And there's nothing really in the movies that we see that would back up this level of power. So for the purpose of this scenario, we'll say that the quad lasers are reasonably powerful, maybe about the same power as a standard ship-mounted laser in Star Trek, 5.1 megawatts. The Defiant's shields are down to about 85%, and they start making evasive maneuvers. Incredibly, with just a little bit of flying around, lurching from left to right, they're able to avoid pretty much 99% of the Falcon's fire.
Yeah, they could also just get a little farther away because, again, the effective range of turbolasers is quite short. And meanwhile, I actually just made a YouTube short about this. The effective range of phasers is 300,000 kilometers, which is far beyond visual range.
This is because the Falcon's weapons use humans to manually aim. There appears to be some sort of computer targeting assistance, but it looks like a computer display from the 80s and probably isn't that helpful. The Defiant now counterattacks with phaser pulses from its forward emitters, and the Falcon's shields take some serious hits, but remember...
Okay, so That single salvo from pulse phasers is capable of one-shotting a Jem'Hadar Scarab attack craft, which is still multiple times bigger than the Falcon, and as he just said, has better shielding. So I think the fight's over. Let's see what he thinks.
Remember, Star Wars shields are strong, so they aren't finished yet.
Okay, you just said that the Falcon's shields aren't as strong as the Defiant's. What the heck, man?
Chewie counters by maneuvering to stay behind the Defiant, but the Starfleet ship simply launches a photon torpedo from the aft launcher, doing serious damage to the Falcon's shields.
They can also use their beam phasers to do the exact same thing, assuming, of course, that the Falcon's able to get behind them. At sublight, Star Wars ships actually aren't all that fast. Full impulse for Star Trek, which is what all ships are capable of doing, and the Defiant can get to full impulse really quickly, is a quarter the speed of light. Way beyond anything that Star Wars ships do.
Chewie now maneuvers below the Defiant, where the Falcon can only be hit with standard phaser emitters, the weakest of the Defiant's weapons.
Which are still far more powerful than what the Falcon has, but whatever.
Falcon stays close to the Defiant and shoots directly up at the hull with its top laser cannon, weakening the ventral shields to the point where they could be penetrated. Seeing a chance to end this, Chewie then activates thrusters on the lower forward section, causing the Falcon to suddenly flip up, facing the lower section of the Defiant.
Man, it sure is lucky for Chewie and Han that the helmsman on the Defiant is incompetent.
The Falcon now launches 8 concussion missiles, its full payload. After the first 6 missiles drain the ventral shields, 2 missiles make it through.
Okay, so he gave energy figures for the concussion missiles in the kiloton range, which I still think is a massive overestimation. That would mean that all 8 of those combined have less yield than a single photon torpedo based on the numbers he gave us. And the Defiant can tank photon torpedoes unshielded, without really any trouble.
But the Defiant has ablative armor, which is able to absorb
Hey, he mentioned it, thank you.
energy through controlled disintegration. The blast just knocked out a few non-essential systems on Deck 4 and punctured a couple of 1-foot wide holes in the hull that were immediately sealed with emergency force fields that activated automatically. On the bridge of the Defiant, Worf is angry. His Klingon blood wine was spilt by the blast, and this guy got injured.
Hey, Worf is far too professional to have blood wine on the bridge.
What do we do, Commander?
We fight. Target their weapons. Fire phasers.
Defiant unleashes hell, firing blast after blast of phaser pulses from the forward emitters and regular beams targeting the Falcon's quad laser turrets.
Hang on, I thought that the Falcon was sitting below them the entire time and the Defiant just couldn't keep up. I guess we forgot about that.
Quad lasers are knocked offline and the ship is left defenseless, but the...
Okay, so pretty sure that the Falcon doesn't have any actual, force fields that they can deploy, which means that quad lasers just getting knocked offline equals there's big damn holes in the ship now.
Falcon has one more trick up its sleeve. Han tells Chewie to jump to hyperspace, any course. Chewie selects a course from the Navi computer, the way back to Corellia, and jumps.
Yes, he's using...
Okay, so that's a stretch that he can just do that. Yeah, hyperdrive calculations don't happen that fast, ever. Like they did hyperspace skipping in the sequel trilogy, that is a ridiculously hazardous thing to do, and by all rights they all should have died because they tried that.
Disengaging a few light years along the course. But when they look back at Tatooine, there is no ship on scanners. The Defiant, thinking this is some kind of trick, has engaged its cloaking device.
Okay, the Falcon absolutely doesn't have sensors capable of detecting that. Holy cow. Yeah, they couldn't even figure out that an entire planet had been disintegrated while they were on their way to Alderaan, and they had to figure out, oh, that's a space station by looking at it when they saw the Death Star for the first time. Yeah, their sensors are... I would contend that Star Wars sensors in general aren't all that good considering their overall level of technology, but the Falcons in particular, yeah, not great at all. There's no way that they're going to be like, oh, around this distant planet light years away, there's this ship. No, no way.
They can see the Falcon on long-range sensors, but they're not going to go to warp and pursue because it would take them several hours to get there.
More like several years. Warp drive is not that fast.
Warp drive is slower than hyperspace, remember. So the Defiant lies in wait, cloaked, quantum torpedoes in tubes. The Falcon is severely damaged and Han knows he doesn't have the power to travel far. The only hope of saving the ship is to jump back to Tatooine and attempt a landing at Mos Eisley Spaceport. So with no enemy ships on scanners, Han makes the fatal decision to jump back. As soon as...
Okay. Yeah, I have a few issues with this. Again, Han is not an idiot. Going, hey, we lost track of our enemy, let's go back to where we last saw them. He's not stupid. There's a ton of other places he could go.
As they come out of hyperspace, they see a distortion ahead of them. It's the Defiant decloaking. The ship fires a single quantum torpedo at the Falcon. Now, quantum torpedoes are more powerful than photon torpedoes. They were Starfleet's weapons against the Dominion and the Borg. Here we see 4 quantum torpedoes destroying a 600-meter wide Borg sphere.
Quantum torpedoes.
Ready, sir.
Fire.
Yeah, quantum torpedoes are no joke.
So one quantum torpedo is easily enough to take care of the 34...
Yeah, as would be one photon torpedo or one phaser shot or one salvo of pulse phasers, whatever.
...meter Falcon in its stricken state, and the ship is destroyed. But the battle attracts the attention of another party in Star Wars who turn up to bring order to the situation.
I'm picking up another ship.
Raise shields.
And that's where we're going to leave today's story, guys. As for the scenario, I don't think there's really any way the Falcon, a modified freighter, could win against a dedicated warship with higher yield weapons and a cloaking device. The only real advantage that the Falcon has is its speed and also the piloting skills of Chewie and Han. But it's not enough. Guys, whether you...
Okay. A lot is said about the piloting skills of Han Solo, but if you look at how fast they're actually capable of moving at sublight speeds, they're not that fast. And we already know, like, it's multiple times stated that impulse is 1/4 the speed of light. And yet Federation helmsmen can actually maneuver at that kind of speed. So it's like, yes, you're a really, really good pilot, but one guy's in a biplane and the other's in a F-16. The guy in the biplane is getting outmaneuvered, period. Always. It doesn't matter. And in terms of the overall matchup, it's a bit ridiculous. A much better matchup would be something like the Delta Flyer from Voyager versus the Falcon, because they're at least even close to the same size and class. But yeah, I mean, this whole matchup is basically a dude in a Winnebago with his with a machine gun and his pet dog versus a Navy gunship. The dude with the machine gun is literally incapable of damaging the gunship. The Defiant could take out the Falcon without their shields up and not take any damage. Whatever, let's see what else he has to say.
Support Star Wars or Star Trek, I think the one thing we can all agree on is that we all support humanity. So why not show your support with one of our Humanity First Death to Alien Scum t-shirts? Help us flush out...
Someone's a Warhammer 40k fan.
...abducting and experimenting on humans for decades. Link in description. If you want to continue this story with the USS Defiant versus an Imperial Star Destroyer, please comment below. Otherwise, how do you think this battle would play out?
I guess I'll have to do that one at some point.
As always, please subscribe if you're new, give this video a like, and if you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.
Okay, yeah, I even did an April Fool's on this a couple years ago at this point, or was that last year? Yeah, he's just wrong. I love the fact that he did bring up a lot of really good information on both sides. That was really good. He even didn't forget about the ablative armor, which is excellent. But man, talk about fudging the numbers. This is a bit like saying the Navy Clipper from back in the day had 100 guns and the USS Missouri only had 6 main guns. So therefore, the USS Missouri from World War II only had 6 main guns. Therefore, it would actually be a pretty close fight, despite the fact that those 6 main guns are 16 inches in diameter and carry explosive rounds versus the Clipper ship has cannonballs. That's the kind of level of discrepancy we're talking about here. It's probably beyond that, actually, because it's not even a Clipper ship with cannonballs. It's some dude with a small cannon in his canoe. They're just not even in the same universe of... Well, they're literally not in the same universe. It's Star Trek and Star Wars. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what he thinks of Defiant versus Star Destroyer. I'm guessing he's going to have the Star Destroyer win based on how he had it be this close with the freaking Falcon. But yeah, the Falcon doesn't win fights against big ships like that. It wins fights against fighters that don't have shields, that most of the time aren't even trying to blow them up. Whatever. With all of that said, I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching and listening. Again, I have a Ko-fi account and Fourth Wall merch store links in the description. I'll also link to his video there. And yeah, until next time, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.